when I was a young child, I watched The Transformers, the movie, for the first time on DVD. It was amazing. And because it was amazing, I just had to go back and watch the 2 seasons of the G1 cartoon that preceded it. And then go back and rewatch the movie to discover that all of my favorite guys from the cartoon had been brutally murdered. So, I had a little chuckle to myself when I saw that this guy had been announced for the studio series. Welcome one and all to the display case. I'm Nate, and today we're looking at Transformers Studio Series, Transformers the Movie, Windcharger. The front of the box is pretty standard for your modern Studio Series figure. We get naming at the bottom with some branding, some awesome key art of Windcharger in his car and robot mode on the right side of the box, as well as some step counters and an age guideline on the left. Top left to be precise. That same awesome key art extends onto the right side of the box, where you can see Windcharger wrap around and a little mini mural of, I guess not a mural, a painted image of Autobot City just being absolutely decimated in the movie. The back of the box has your usual half page of legalities there, that's a lot. A step counter, renders of Windcharger in both his robot and vehicle form, as well as something a little bit different this time. They have the little description of who Windcharger is and what he usually does, but also in the space where there's usually a screenshot of the movie, we get the original poster. And this makes sense because the only time we see Windcharger in the movie is when his lifeless body is being dragged to safety by RC. And I get it because that's not really something you want to put on the back of that character's box. On the left side of said box, we get that same key art of Windcharger, this time blown up a little bit, with a little name tag down the bottom. Now I like what they've been doing here because it gives you an option to stack the boxes like the old Studio Series boxes and have the names down the sides, so you can have it like, sort of like a book display. But I would really like to see if anyone has actually done this. Send through some photos if you have. So before he died off screen in the movie, I swear I remember Windcharger being the cooler Kid Appeal character in the show. Or the character that just hung around Spike a lot. He was a mini-bot, so he was a little bit more mature than Bumblebee, but I guess a little bit more action-driven than Hound. Overall, he's one of the Autobots that came to Earth in the arc in Season 1 that has been sort of overlooked in favor of other more popular characters in recent years, especially after the live-action movies. And I guess that's why it took us so long to get a modern figure of him. But now we have him, I'm happy to say that he's an excellent little deluxe. Especially because he's part of this new design philosophy for the Studio Series that really hones in on the aesthetic of the G1 cartoon. Things like the brighter, more vibrant colours, the flat whites instead of silvers, and the really bright blues for the eyes. Other changes like the Autobot symbols now don't have any backgrounds, they're painted directly onto the plastic, just like how they looked for the most part in the G1 cartoon. And while the whole design may be smoother overall, it doesn't mean the absolute absence of sculpted detail. Little greeblies can still be found throughout the entire figure, so no need to worry about that. He also comes with a couple of good accessories, namely his blaster pistol that he uses in the show. It's molded in the same white as his legs instead of like a dark grey like it is in the show, but it's still a pretty good sculpt. You can pop it directly into his hand with a 5mm port and peg combo. And if you don't feel like having it in his hands, you can always turn him around and plug it directly into this little port on his backside. It holds it well, and it's an excellent piece of accessory storage, which I really appreciate. He also comes with what I wouldn't consider a blast effect, but more a ability effect. It's his magnetic ability from the show. It's cast in a clear plastic, and while I go to pick it back up again, it's painted in this clear yellow top coat, which makes it really pop. You can attach it to Windcharger by plugging it directly into that big rectangular shaped hole on his chest. making sure that that thinner second tab is faced downward. Even though he doesn't use it in the movie, it's still referencing a couple of really specific moments for the cartoon, and it does hold securely, so I'm a fan of it. But if you're not a fan of it, that's okay too. You can store it on him by plugging that smaller tab into the hole on his back. With Windcharger, I'm actually really happy with the amount of accessory storage options they've given us. It's a weird change from normal, but I hope it's a trend that continues. Windcharger also looks excellent amongst his brethren of Autobot minibots. Minus Beachcomber and Sea Spray, because I haven't gotten those yet. He stands at a really perfect height for an Autobot soldier, not as short as Bumblebee or Cliffjumper, but about the same height as Brawn or Warpath or even Gears. But just like in the show, he's clearly smaller than larger bots like Optimus or a Voyager like Ratchet or even a bigger deluxe in a Carbot like Bluestreak. I'm just happy that Hasbro are sticking to their scale guide and making sure that characters like Windcharger are accurately scaled amongst the rest of their respective cast. I also think that for a deluxe, and while it's not perfect, Windcharger definitely has some good articulation. He's got a head that's on a swivel that can rotate pretty tightly side to side, as well as this little lever in the back that, when you push it down, actually articulates his head inside of his hood, so he can be looking up without the need of a ball joint. He's also got ball joints for shoulders that can rotate all the way around and go up just under 90 degrees, before popping off. He's also got a bicep swivel, a 90-degree elbow bend, a fully rotating waist, hips that can go all the way forward, backward, and sideways, a full thigh swivel, knees that can bend just under 90 degrees, with a little bit of forward and backwards movement at his ankle, probably so that you can adjust his weight distribution and not have him fall over as much, and finally a 90-degree tilt at his ankle. Just as a side note, while I was articulating this guy, I did notice that every time I went to bend the knee, this whole foot section would just come apart. It was a little bit annoying, but luckily it's easier to tab back in. So Windcharger has a decent amount of articulation. He's not perfect, and there are a couple of things that they could have done better here. Namely, I feel like that whole lower foot section looks a bit awkward when it's tilted. I think it could have looked better if they separated that piece again and had a tilting foot just below that main piece. I'm also not a massive fan of how empty that entire piece feels, but it is necessary for the transformation, so I'm willing to overlook it. I am also happy that they've included 90% of the modern articulation points that we usually get in today's figures. Especially when it comes to that little lever at the back of his head. I really wasn't expecting them to incorporate that level of articulation for something that really didn't need it. They could have just given him a ball joint and called it a day, but they went that extra mile and developed something new, which I appreciate. A lot of the articulation points, like the hollow calves, can be explained away as well by saying that they're necessary for the transformation, which is actually quite fun and unique. What a cute little bright red Pontiac this is supposed to be. In this mode, Windcharger has a couple more cartoon accurate details, like the outline only Autobot symbol on his bonnet, the really simplified and toony front grille, as well as those really thick rear tyres and off-road attachments for the car overall. They have also decided to go with transparent windows for Windcharger, and in all honesty, I wish they would just pick an approach for these figures and stick to it. I'm a little bit sick of them going back and forth between opaque and transparent. And just like in his robot mode, he fits in just as nicely with his other fellow minibots. I love that they've given him, and other figures overall now, the more G1 Toon aesthetic, and I think the only one due for an update is probably Cliffjumper, who's surely coming soon. I just think that everything to do with Windcharger's car mode is just pleasant to handle, from the transformation all the way to how securely everything tabs together, and just general fun factor. You can also store Windcharger's blaster and ability effect on his car mode. You simply grab him, flip him over, and see these little tabs on the inside of his wheels? You can actually plug the blaster into those. The instructions say to do it this way. You take the blaster and that peg and you plug it in with the barrel facing towards the front of the vehicle. Which does look nice enough. But I discovered that you can actually plug it in the opposite direction, and if you do it this way, it actually looks like a bit of an exhaust pipe for the car mode, which I think looks a lot better in the context of being a car and having the weapon be stored. Same goes for his ability effect. That magnetic ray can also plug in to the front of the car, just like it does in his robot mode on his chest. The smaller tab on the effects piece goes directly into the hole on the front of the car, mirroring the look of how he uses it in the G1 cartoon. Overall, I think Windcharger is one of the more underrated Autobots from the original G1 series. And in that sense, I think it's a little bit weird that they are releasing characters like him that died in the 86 movie under the Studio Series 86 movie subline. But I do think that it is an excellent opportunity to give us refreshed figures or brand new figures that we haven't seen before or require an upgrade, like the upcoming 86 Wheeljack, which is supposed to be a new mold. I think that Windcharger is the tip of the iceberg, and it's a good iceberg at that. This guy is excellent for a deluxe, and I think you should pick him up if you ever get the chance. He's just genuinely fun to play with all of his accessories and both of his modes just meshing together into this really, really cool and nice package, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. If you like this one, feel free to check out my channel where I've got more just like it. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or even a comment with your own thoughts on the new Windcharger. I look forward to reading them. Thank you again, and we'll catch up soon.